crafting equipment is one of the long-term goals of any War of the Vision player, as it can make quite a bit of difference in your team's performance. Unfortunately, the system is unwieldy and has a learning curve. Let's take a look at how equipment actually works and where new players can get it. There are 3 equipment slots per unit in War of the Visions. The first 2 can be filled with crafted or event equipment. You can only equip 1 weapon and 1 armor each, but you can equip multiple accessories. The third slot is for Trustmaster rewards, or TMRs. You can acquire a Trustmaster reward from a unit when they reach Limit Break 5 and Awakening level 6. A unit's Trustmaster reward slot won't be available until they reach Limit Break 5 and Awakening 5. As a quick aside, I wanted to mention that when you have armor equipped in the Trustmaster reward slot, when you go to equip the other slots, no armor will actually show up as you already have one equipped. In order to see the armor that you could equip to Hio, you'll first have to remove the armor in the Trustmaster reward slot and then scroll through the other slots. All equipment will have a set of stats that will be bestowed to the user. They typically also have passive effects under the additional abilities section. These passives do not stack with other passives and do not have reduced effects if you have multiple. Only one will count. So for example, this Armor of Light +6 gives 8 magic resistance up. But I can also look that I have the Titus's Necklace +6 equipped, which gives 10 magic resistance. I am not getting a total of 18 magic resistance, I am only getting 10 from the Titus Necklace. When you equip your units with equipment with similar stats, only the highest stat will be taken at max value. For example, when we look at Hio here, I can equip his Ultima Bringer weapon to give him 217 attack, and that's represented in the stat screen. However, when I go to equip something else that also has the attack stat, for example, our Blaze Ring, it will give 80 attack, but when I go to equip it, we'll see that the attack is only going up by 40. So the second item has an attack stat of 80, but only 50% of that attack is actually being added to Hio's stats. Another thing to consider is equipment proficiency. Proficiency rises with the unit whenever they attack in battle while wearing the type of equipment you want to raise proficiency with. If you have a lower proficiency than the rarity of the equipment you are using, then you won't get the full stats from it. When we look at the Ultima Bringer, which is an MR rarity weapon, you can see that it has a proficiency of B or better. But then when we click on the Defense Bracer, which is a UR rarity item, it needs an A proficiency in order to get the full stats from it. Raising proficiency isn't hard, just make sure you don't forget to do it. So when you typically start to build a unit, make sure they have an armor on, a weapon on, and also an accessory. And before you know it, they will have A's in all of their proficiency values. Another thing to consider is the conditions to equip any sort of equipment. So we can click on that button to see who can equip particular items. Weapons are pretty straightforward, but you'd be surprised that some items actually have restrictions. A few examples include the Dark Mistress's shoes, which are Dark Fina's TMR. The conditions to equip are female only. We can also look at the Black Rose headdress, which is Black Rose Helena's TMR. This is one of the best TMRs in the game because of the ability, but also because of the stats on the TMR. However, it does have a very specific set of casting classes that can use it. There are also types of equipment which actually give TP skills which units can use in battle. Most of these items are Trustmaster rewards, however there are a few craftable items that give skills. For example, the Healing Staff actually gives the user the ability to use Cura. We can also look at a Trustmaster reward like Sorrow's Battlewear, which has the ability Padfoot. This ability gives haste and decreases the chance of being targeted for 3 turns, which is a very useful ability. You have to consider that this will be an ability that the user might actually use over their own kit's abilities, so you can actually turn this off in the unit screen. If I long press on Fina and scroll down, I can see the ability Padfoot, and I can long press on that. And here I can actually turn off the TMR ability so that she doesn't use it in battle over her own skills. In the equipment menu, when I select a specific TMR, at the bottom right I can actually enhance the abilities of that TMR. So here I can use my King Armor pots to raise the ability for Yuffie's TMR to level 20, which will then increase the amount of luck that it gives her for 3 turns. Let's talk about crafting equipment next. In War of the Visions, there are several different levels of equipment that you can craft. In order to craft these different tiers, you're going to need many recipes. Nowadays, the quests that bring these weapons often give you a +3 for reaching certain achievements. but the best equipment in the game is typically +5 or +6. Now, +5 is the standard. You're not going to +6 every single item. You only +6 items that you're really fond of. When we go into the crafting menu, we can see that I have a ton of recipes. In order to take something to +5, you'll actually need 63 recipes. So take this defense bracer, for instance. I have 67 recipes. If I click to craft it, I can actually bring it all the way to +5 with this meter. And it will tell me whether I have all of the materials or not. If your craft button is actually dark blue and you can't click it, make sure you scroll down to see, as the awakening enhancing materials might also be holding you back. So I might see that I have enough of the sacred tree sap up above, and I'm thinking, well, what's the problem? But when I scroll down, I see that I'm actually missing some and I'd have to go farm some. When you put the bar to +5 and hit craft, it will give you the option to select the different types of equipment that you can make. I'm on the website warofthevisionscalc.com, and you can see that for the defense bracer we were just looking at, it has a vital type, an aim type, and a shield type. Depending on which one I pick, it will actually affect the max stats that it offers. So in the case of this defense bracer, you might want the shield type, as that gives the most defense available. But maybe you'd want to craft an aim type because you want 15 accuracy. To be honest, if you were crafting this, you're likely going to be picking the shield type, and some players might take the vital type, but the shield would be the most common here. When we look at weapons, they usually have a vital, assault, an aim, or a critical type. For the most part, the safest weapons to build are the assault type, as they give the highest attack stats. Sometimes you may build the aim stat, but that is a very specific case, and that's something that you might want to seek advice about if you're a new player. The same thing goes for critical weapons. Oftentimes it's just safer to build the assault type, but again, if you are specifically building a unit for critical damage and you know that you're going to be getting a lot of critical hits, it might actually be a better idea to craft a critical version. There is also equipment rarity to keep in mind. The majority of farmable equipment in this game is the MR rarity, and you can see that there's a lot of different options in the game already for you to craft. However, there are UR rarity items, and these typically come from time-limited events like raids or the Trials of Reckoning. Sometimes they're UR items that come with a unit within their bingo board when you pull for them. The UR items are definitely stronger than the MR, but they can be harder to obtain. Luckily, there is a lot of good MR equipment that you can farm in this game, and we're going to talk about some examples later in the video. There are also SR, R, and N rarity type equipment, and most of the time you won't actually be crafting any of this. There are some specific cases where you might, but for the most part, just focus on the MR equipment. So where do you actually get equipment from? Well, the main place is going to be in the far plane under the events tab. So here we're going to see any weekly events that are happening where you can farm quests. For example, right now we have the equipment training quest for the Ultima Bringer, but we also have the ability to farm Sephiroth's Masamune. Typically, a player wants to farm these while the quests are up, as some of them may not be returning, like the Final Fantasy VII weapons, and the Ultima Bringer will return, or perhaps you can get it later through the Farplane archives, but it is easiest to get it when it's up. Most experienced players will farm and craft a +5 of every single weapon and armor that comes out during its event period. This may not be attainable right away for new players, but it is a long-term goal, which you'll be surprised how easy it is to do later on when your account is powered up. The tricky part is that the best drop rates are actually in the Brutal Equipment Training quest. However, that is not an easy quest often for new players without full VCs, espers, units, and equipment loadouts. It's something that experienced players might take for granted, how easy it is for us to clear these equipment quests and actually do all of the achievements on them. I do recommend trying to clear these brutal quests with a fire-only party or whatever element it is for the quest, maybe using a companion unit so that you can get the +3 version of that item, as that will greatly reduce your crafting time. You may not be able to clear all the other quests, and maybe not all at the same time, but if you can get that +3 weapon that comes with the quest, that will be a huge help. If you're unable to farm the brutal quest, you can actually just run the regular equipment quest as many times as it takes to get those 63 recipes. Another option is to go into the multiplayer mode, as the drop rates are even higher for recipes. Especially if you're hosting the room, you'll get a host bonus which might include more recipes or more crafting materials. There are options for farming equipment that's no longer in the weekly events tab. For example, in the key quests tab, you can actually access past challenge quests in order to craft different pieces of gear. The top two are actually the most interesting to me, as these two accessories have a lot of viability for various teams. We can also go to the Far Plains Archives tab, and you can access all previous story and equipment, unit, and title events. Here you'll be able to find a lot of different equipment for different units. In the equipment tab, we can see it's very clear which equipment actually comes from the quest. In the story tab, you'll actually have to click on the quest details and scroll down to see what this actually gives you. You can use Farplain Archive keys to open these quests for a day, but you also get one free entry per day to farm as much as you want. These entries also open a multiplayer version of the room, so you can do this with your friends in your guild if you want to farm together. The farther you scroll down in these lists, the earlier in the game's history you're going to reach. These quests will actually be easier to complete for a new player, as they were originally intended for level 99 units, or maybe even lower than that. So for example, if you want to go back to the beginning of the game and take on this quest to acquire the smart coat, that would actually be a great idea. The smart coat is a very great item that cloth users can wear to increase their spirit and magic resistance. Another great choice would be the platinum bow, which would give your units 20 defense penetration. Or maybe you have a magic user and you want to go for the cypress pile. This will give you 20 magic resistance penetration, meaning that you can get through any magic defense that a tank might offer. There are a lot of other quests in here that you might look at, for example, if you're farming for a glove user, or maybe you need the Seitan, which is a magic katana for specifically units that use magic damage and katanas. I'm not going to go into too many specific examples of where to actually farm your equipment, but if you have a unit and you want to know which equipment is best for them, you can ask down in the comments below, and I'm happy to answer you, and then you'll find out which quest you can actually farm. For example, if I'm building Satya, a bow unit that has lower accuracy, I'm going to farm the Goga and Saiga Part 2 quest, as that gives me access to the runebow recipe. The runebow can be built to +6, and this is an example of where you'd actually build an aim version of weapon to build accuracy because it gives such a high stat. Or perhaps you're building a sword unit that needs some extra defense penetration. You might go into the Silence of the Songbirds quest, as that gives you access to the Spine Blade, which gives 20 defense penetration to the user. If I were to give a few other recommendations, I would say the Rune Staff is pretty interesting, as it gives healing power up, and if you put it on any of your healers, they'll be able to heal for more. You could also look at the random battle quest to get the Thornlet, which is an accessory with a very high crit rate that also gives defense penetration. This is very useful because it's an accessory and anybody can equip it, and it will give that defense penetration to them. One final recommendation, you could look at the For Love of a Smile quest in order to build the White Cape. This is a newer quest though, and it will be more difficult for new players to clear. However, the White Cape is a fabulous accessory for new players, as it gives agility and some other stats. For the final part of the video, I'll discuss why I actually equipped the equipment I have on my meta team units. So let's start with Sorrow. He has his own event sword because it gives him specifically some very good stats. I also put on the Black Garb, as this is an evade piece of gear that gives defense penetration. It means that it increases his damage while increasing his evasion, and even has dark resistance up for fighting against Sephiroth. Finally, I have a Trustmaster reward, the Saiga Gauntlet. This gives lots of agility and also gives some evasion. However, you might notice it has all of these green abilities at the bottom under additional abilities. These are from Trust Stones, which we're not going to cover in this video, but just know the Trust Stones that I have equipped will give all of these passive abilities to this TMR, but also is actually increasing these stats that you see on the screen. If you look at your Saiga Gauntlet, it won't look like this unless you've put Trust Stones on it. For King Mont, I've gone a little bit of a different route. He is built to tank, not to deal damage, so he doesn't have a weapon equipped. The first thing is the Hope's Scarf, as it gives some defense, but also again, dark attack resistance up. We then have the Pod 153, which is from the Nier collaboration. This is a really handy accessory, as it gives agility, but also unit attack resistance up, something that's very useful for a tank. Unfortunately, this is not available right now, but hopefully Nier returns so that everybody can access this accessory. Finally, I've given him the Glinting Armor, which is King Rob's TMR. This has an ability called Keen Blade, which manipulates the CT of all the allies around Self for one turn. What this will do is make everybody's turns come faster. So at the beginning of the match, my 2 faster units will run to King Mont to buff him. He'll then use his Keen Blade, and hopefully my team will all go again or very quickly and possibly lap my opponents. Then we have Yuffie, who has her event specific weapon. She has the Winter Coat, which gives a lot of evasion. We're talking 29 there and 10 under the passives. And finally, she has the King of the Lion's Cloak, which I've built to be an evasion item. However, it doesn't actually come with innate agility. I've had to supplement that through the TMR. The reason that I have this with her instead of an agility TMR is because I want her to be slower than Sorrow. You can see that there's quite a bit of thought that goes into equipping your units, thinking about how fast they're going to be, which order they're going to buff in. Are they going to be using their TMR skills, or are you going to be turning them off? This game is very in-depth in terms of the customization that you can actually do with your teams, and it's going to be a long process to acquire the pieces for this, but also the knowledge. So don't stress out about getting to the end point right away. It's going to be a journey, and hopefully this guide has helped.